Hello everyone, and welcome to Week 10 of our Government 2305 Introduction to American Government course. This week, we will be looking at the United States Congress. We will begin our tour of Congress by examining how members of Congress represent their constituents and how the congressional election process holds members accountable to the voters in their states or congressional districts. This first section discusses the constitutional powers of Congress, which are enumerated or listed in Article 1 of the Constitution. These include the power to raise an army and a navy, to make rules and regulations that govern them, declare war, print coins and currency, borrow money, regulate interstate commerce, regulate laws and procedures for immigration and naturalization, as well as for bankruptcies, establish and oversee post office and postal roads, create and enforce copyright and patent laws, call up the state militias to oversee them as necessary, to commission military officers to establish a system of courts to go along with the Supreme Court, which was created by Article 3 of the Constitution, to punish counterfeiters, and to create all laws that are necessary and proper for enforcing these enumerated powers. This last part, which is called the Necessary and Proper or Elastic Clause, is found in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and it allows for a vast set of implicit powers which are exercised through Congress's ability to create new laws and apply powers that it sees fit in order to enforce those laws. In other words, Congress has widespread constitutional authority to create new laws and to enforce its enumerated powers as it sees fit. Now, when it comes to representation, members of both the House and the Senate are responsible for representing the unique perspectives of their constituents as they make and enforce new laws. Descriptive representation is the term that basically means the elected members of Congress from a particular state or district look, act, and sound like the people who elected them. This is often difficult to achieve for a variety of reasons. For instance, theoretically, women are 51% of the overall population, but women do not comprise more than 50% of elected members to the House or the Senate. So Congress does not exhibit descriptive representation of women in the general population. Most often, we look to the idea of substantive representation to explain how members of Congress best exemplify the voice of the people. A trustee is someone who directly represents the wishes and the views of their constituency. A delegate is someone who listens to the wishes of his or her constituents, but can also make decisions that they believe will be in the best interest of the public as a whole, when necessary. And lastly, a politico is someone who shows a balance between being in the two. Since members of Congress want to keep their jobs, they are politically tied to their constituents. They make sure that they act to bring government projects and federal funds to their home state or district, and they engage in constituent work, which means that they and their staff directly interact with their constituents or the people who they represent through offices both in their home states and districts, as well as in Washington, D.C. Incumbents are often seen as having a great advantage over any challengers, and in between 80 and 90% of all congressional elections, we find that this is true. As we discussed last week, another activity that is used in order to give a political advantage or disadvantage to a particular candidate or party is the process of gerrymandering, which means drawing congressional district lines every 10 years in order to give an advantage to the political party who holds the majority of legislators at the state level. A great deal of frustration lies in the fact that we want our elected representatives to be responsive to the needs and to the desires of their constituents. But those same elected officials feel pressure from their party leadership and their own best interests as well. When all of these compete with each other, we often see a lack of legislative accomplishment among our elected members of Congress. When few important laws are generated by Congress, we often describe this as legislative gridlock. And as partisanship has increased, the amount of perceived legislative gridlock has risen sharply as well. Congress is governed by a set of rules and norms. While norms are not official rules, they are informal agreements which are held by legislators. A few of these norms would include log rolling, which is a political science term for you vote for my bill and I'll vote for yours. Or as you would often say, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Earmarks, which are federally funded local projects which are attached to bills that are passed through Congress. When an earmark is placed in a bill that is unrelated to it and it gives a financial or other type of benefit to a particular group, to the state, or to a congressional district, it is often called pork barrel spending. The formal structure of Congress can be seen in its leadership and its committees. In the House, the Speaker of the House is selected by the members of the majority party. In addition, there is a minority leader as well as a majority whip and a minority whip, which all serve the best interest of their party. The Vice President, by constitutional authority, presides over the Senate, but in his or her absence, a President pro tem is also selected by the majority party. There is a majority and a minority leader as well as majority and minority whips. And besides these leadership positions, there are also committee chairs who are all selected by the majority party leadership in the House and in the Senate. And there are 4 kinds of committees that do business in both the House and the Senate. These include standing committees, select committees, joint committees, and conference committees. Of course, the purpose of having a Congress is to make laws. There is a formal process in both the House and in the Senate for how a law is entered for consideration, sent to committee for deliberation, forwarded to the floor for a vote, and then reconciled with any competing legislation that may be coming from the other chamber. We will look at that conventional process by which a bill becomes a law and the different paths that a bill can take in the lawmaking process. We will also look at differences between how the House and the Senate operate. Let's remember that members of the House of Representatives only serve 2-year terms. This means that they are always running for re-election, while members of the Senate serve 6-year terms. This makes a difference in how bills are introduced and make it through the legislative process. The House is more responsive to the constituents in a member's particular congressional district, while the Senate is more deliberative in its proceedings because its members serve longer terms and have more room for debate. An example of this is the filibuster, which literally means to talk a bill to death, speaking until the bill dies. This can only take place in the Senate unless 2/3 or around 64 of the senators vote to stop it, which is called a cloture. Lastly, we will look at the role of Congress in the oversight process. Congress can oversee government and the enforcement of laws by controlling the purse strings through budgeting, by holding hearings, by conducting investigations, by overturning bureaucratic decisions, and by using the Senate's power for advice and consent for specific members of the executive branch who must go through a confirmation process, and of course, through its power to impeach the president, the vice president, federal judges, or other civil officers as necessary. Okay, now that's our look into the legislative branch of government in a nutshell. Now let's turn to your activities in Blackboard this week. First, you have discussion question number 10, which looks into the oversight role of the legislature. And you will watch a speech that's given by Representative Ruben Gallego of Arizona and Ted Lieu of California, in which they entitled it Congressional Oversight 101, otherwise known as Congress for Dummies. After viewing the video, you will then look at another document called Congressional Oversight and Investigations 101. This document will further explain the congressional oversight process to you. You will then answer the following question, and it's in several parts. How important is congressional oversight authority? At what point do you think Congress should use its oversight power in order to act as a check on the executive or the legislative branches? Do you believe the Republican-controlled Congress used its oversight power Or were the Democrats right in criticizing Republican leaders as to the use of their power, constitutional oversight authority? Don't forget to respond to another student's post by providing feedback or criticisms of their response, and be sure to support any arguments that you make. Next, you have current event assignment number 5, which will be the last of your current event assignments. Yay! If you have forgotten how to do this type of assignment, I have provided instructions with the link for posting. Your document should be around 1 page in length, and you can use the current events form to properly format your response. You will also have a reading quiz to complete this week, which covers chapters 6 to 9 in your textbook, and the link is ready for you, and it follows the same format we have followed on the previous 2 quizzes. You may use your textbook and the notes, but please don't copy and paste from the internet or use your fellow classmates as resources. I've also posted the reading packet number 5 document on Congress. You should read this towards the end of the week, this packet, in preparation for next week's position paper assignment. Okay, I know that's a lot of work for the week, but I also know that you can do this. If you have any questions, please email me, message me, or see me in class with your questions or concerns. And if you need to get a hold of me by phone, please call me at 301-9863. All right, have a very good week, and I will see you online or in class.